All across America and around the world, welcome to America's #1 veterans program, the voice of America's veterans, Veterans Radio. And now, here's your host for today's program, former Chief Warrant Officer, 195th Assault Helicopter Company, Republic of Vietnam, 1969, Dale Throneberry.
And good morning, everyone. 1969. Holy mackerel, that's 40 years ago. I was talking to somebody earlier this week, and because Woodstock's 40th anniversary is this week also, for those of you that can remember Woodstock in upstate New York. And somebody asked if I had been there, and I said, no, I'm sorry, I was out of town that week. Wasn't able to make it. But you are listening to Veterans Radio, and we are coming to you from the studios of WDEO 990 AM in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we want to thank the management of WDEO for offering us the opportunity of using their studios. It's been a great ride for us, and we're very excited to be on their station.
Over 300 programs.
Oh, my gosh.
Isn't that something? There's a lot of television programs and shows that make it for 1 year, and we've almost 6.
I know. It is kind of amazing, and we never run out of topics, which is always, my little segue today. Segue. Today we're going to be talking about the GI Bill. The big GI Bill, and a new deal for veterans. And the original GI Bill from 1944 is when it was signed by President Franklin Roosevelt. And I think you're going to be interested today. We've got the author of the book, The GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans, Glenn Altschuler from Cornell University. And he's going to be talking to us about the history of veterans benefits. And I think you're going to find it fascinating, because when I was reading through it, I found it fascinating.
Did you have the GI Bill?
Oh, yeah.
I did, too.
And, I think they had to get us a new edition of whatever it was, and then they would give us
retro. It was retro.
They gave us, we'll get into this later, but they gave us X amount of cash, and we could choose whatever college we wanted to go to every month, and we had to pay our own bills.
I was driving a truck, married, 2 children, driving a truck, and I heard it on the radio. I called the school, I called the college, enrolled, quit my job the next day. That's a true story, and went to school full time when I heard the GI Bill was coming. That's a true story. There's
a lot of stories like that out there, and I'm hoping that people out there that are listening to our program today possibly can give us a call here at Veterans Radio, and our number in the studio is 877-573-7825. That's 877-573-7825. We're going to be talking with Glenn after the welcome home break. But first, I understand that the Air Force wants to talk to us. They always have to make a big entrance. The reason we're doing this is that up at Selfridge Air Force Base, this is locally in Michigan, up in Mount Clemens, the Selfridge Air Show is going on starting this morning, and you can go out there and see the Thunderbirds, the U.S. Air Force's crack Air Force team, and you're going to be able to see them fly and give their demonstrations. There are static displays of different types of aircraft. There's going to be remote-controlled aircraft, and we talked about this with the Navy flyers, the Blue Angels, a couple of weeks ago that were here locally, but now you have the opportunity to go up and see the Thunderbirds. It is a free show, folks. Free admission, free parking, and I'll get into the rules of what you have to do and bring up there in just a second. But, Bob, I know you had a story you wanted to tell about the last time you saw the Blue Angels down in Dayton.
When I was down in Dayton covering the Dayton Air program, Dayton Air Show, I was covering the Thunderbirds when they arrived the day before the air show. And I was given Thunderbird number 1. Well, they pull in formation, and the mechanics come out, and they put the ladder, and they open the canopy and unbuckle the pilot. And my pilot climbed down out of the aircraft, and my pilot walked over. And it was just me and another guy. There were 5 of them, I believe, that day. And pilot took off the helmet and shook her hair. I was, you don't expect that, right? I'm from the other military. Come on, other guys out there. This woman just flew 800 miles an hour. They did a little air show, too, before they landed. I don't know. They must, kind of get the kinks out, right?
Yeah, it's like they kind of practice. They do this really precision formation landing of 4 or 5 jets, and they come in low over the field usually, and they peel off, and it's just exciting. So if anybody's got the opportunity today to get up to Selfridge Air Force Base, Air National Guard Base,
and by the way, I was just so taken back by the fact that we now have female fighter pilots.
Well, we've got female fighter pilots. We have female helicopter pilots. In fact, even in the New York Times last Sunday, I believe it was a front page story about women in Afghanistan and Iraq and the jobs that they're doing over there now. So it's pretty exciting. We're going to be doing another show on women in the military coming up in a couple of months. But I just wanted to make sure that those of you out there that have the opportunity, get up to Selfridge and take in this air show. Remember, you're going to be going on to a military base, so you will not be able to bring on coolers. And all types of things like that. If you drive your car onto the base, they're going to search it. Motorcyclists, don't be wearing all your leathers necessarily, because they're going to be looking at appropriate attire.
Yes, that's
right.
It's
military, and they do these things. So
I believe no backpacks.
No backpacks, no food, you can bring in a folding chair, but you can't bring in the little bag that you carry the chair in. There's all types of things. So you want to check on that, and you may have to do some walking because it's
Now there is one thing, water will be provided.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, hold on.
Not sodas, but water.
Yeah, but anything that you bring in, you have to carry in your hands. Remember, no glass or can containers. Just be forewarned. Anyway, should be a great time. It's right off of M59. You're going to be able to see it 2 days, 2 shows. And for those of you that love this type of stuff, I wanted to remind our audience out west that they're going to be out in Hillsboro, Oregon next weekend. Over Labor Day, they're going to be in Cleveland, Ohio. On September 12th, they're going to be out in Sacramento, California. Then they go overseas to Hawaii and Seoul, Korea, and an unknown location, it said. And they'll be back at Homestead Air Force Base, which I believe is their home base, in November in Homestead, Florida. For more information on the Thunderbirds, go to thunderbirds.airforce.com. It's a great show for you. Hopefully you'll get out to see that. Coming up also here on Veterans Radio, we've got a big show coming up of our own. Over Labor Day weekend, we're going to be out at the Eastern Michigan Army football game. And we got a tailgate. We're going to be recording a program out there on the 5th. And we invite all of you to come out there to see us and to meet up with your veterans. It's a special program honoring veterans at Eastern Michigan. They're going to be playing West Point, the Michigan chapter of the West Point Graduates Association. I know that's wrong. But they're going to be there, and we're going to be there, and we invite all of you. You can get inexpensive tickets, $3. If you go on to the Eastern Michigan website.
I think that's important, though, that they have to go to the website to get the $3 tickets.
Right.
Don't come to the game and get the $3 ticket.
Right. They won't have any available there for you. But you can call the ticket office, or you can go on to the Eastern Michigan University website and go to their ticket office. Their promotional code to use is VETERAN. And you can get game tickets for $3. Or what?
Or you can be one of the first 100 that come to our site right there outside of Rynearson Stadium, beginning at 4 o'clock on the 5th, and the tickets will be complimentary. We have 100 complimentary tickets right now.
Oh, they're probably a little bit less than that
right
now.
Yes.
but yeah, show up at our tent.
89.
We're going to have a huge tent. Let me tell you what's going on here. We're going to have a huge tent set up there. There's going to be food for 150 people. Hot dogs, hamburgers, all types of things, beverages. There's going to be live music for you that we're going to be providing. We're also going to be playing a little bit of let's say World War II, Vietnam era, current things. We invite all current Iraq, Afghanistan veterans to please come out. The American Legion, the VFW, the VVA is going to be there. The Traumatic Brain Injury Association is going to be there with materials to hand out. So this is a great opportunity between 4 and 7 on September 5th, and then we're all going to the game. They're going to honor veterans at halftime. The band's doing a great show, and then they're going to have fireworks at the end of the football game. So this is a big deal,
day.
folks.
And what time is that game again? 7 o'clock?
The game is at 7 o'clock, Rynearson Stadium in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and we're going to be right outside the stadium, and it's going to be a great opportunity for you to come and actually see how old we are, and to talk with us and to answer questions, because we are going to be recording a show during that time period.
Bring your cameras.
So bring your cameras.
You might want to take a shot. They don't know what we are just a voice.
That's right.
Just a voice.
That's right. But it's a great opportunity, and I'm very excited. And Eastern Michigan has gone out of its way to honor all veterans in the area. So we want you to make sure that you get out there and get your opportunity to be acknowledged. You men and women who have served in the military, you did a great thing. And we want to make sure that you are aware of what you did for them. The other thing that I thought was coming up, and I'll talk about this at the end of the show, the USO, the Bob Hope Golf Outing is coming up, and I'll talk about that at the end of the program. But right now, Veterans Radio has a tradition. Every show we have done for almost 6 years now, we have been welcoming home troops from around the world. And Bob, you're on.
Thank you, Dale. Welcome home. Each week on Veterans Radio, we welcome home servicemen and women who have been stationed around the world in the service of their country and are returning home. This is Bob Gould. Dateline, Fort Hood, Texas. About 300 soldiers from the Special Troops Battalion, 2nd Infantry Division, are returning from a 12-month deployment to Afghanistan. Dateline, Cape May, New Jersey. Some 650 soldiers touched down in Fort Dix this morning after their recent one-year tour in Iraq. They are part of a group of more than 2,800 soldiers with the Army National Guard's 50th Infantry Brigade Combat Team. They were sent to Iraq in the largest overseas deployment of the New Jersey National Guard since World War II. A parade ceremony and festive picnic will honor the 79-member Alpha Troop 2-101 Cavalry of the New York National Guard. They returned after nearly a year in Afghanistan. This followed the unit's 18th-month tour. That was in 2005 and 2007. Dateline, Humboldt, Wisconsin. It was a welcome home celebration for more than 24 soldiers from the 353rd Transportation Company. One soldier was heard to say, quote, "There's no place like home. I can tell you that. It's just good to be home. Good to see the kids." This is Bob Gould, and welcome home. Each week on Veterans Radio, we do welcome home veterans that are returning.
World War II music, how appropriate. What we're going to be talking about today is the GI Bill, a new deal for veterans. It's a new book that's been out and it's published, written by Glenn Altschuler and Stuart Blumen. And our guest on Veterans Radio is Glenn Altschuler. And let me tell you a little bit about Glenn as soon as I find my notes here. There you go. Glenn is the Thomas and Dorothy Litwin Professor of American Studies and the Dean of the School of Continuing Education and Summer Sessions at Cornell University. He's also the author, and I thought this was interesting, of All Shook Up, How Rock and Roll Changed America, among other books. And Glenn, I want to welcome you to Veterans Radio. Good morning.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, hi, you're on.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the program, and I want to, as I said to people, I want to welcome Glenn to Veterans Radio, and we're going to be talking about the GI Bill. And as I was listening to the music that Bob played at the intro here, I thought maybe we should go back and play some Revolutionary War music, because that's where this whole idea of helping out veterans started, wasn't it?
Well, in every war, there has been a discussion during and following that war about ways to reward veterans, and in the American Revolution, when money was scarce, one way that was used was land grants to veterans, and so Americans have appreciated the sacrifices of their soldiers in every war, but the ways in which they've rewarded those soldiers and thanked them have varied dramatically from war to war.
I think it's going to be very interesting for our audience today, Glenn, to talk about the GI Bill and kind of the history of how we have treated veterans over the time. I thought that what I found most interesting was, as you mentioned earlier, about the Revolutionary War and up through the Civil War. So I wanted to address those issues initially. During the Revolutionary War, there was no draft. This was kind of initial all volunteer army, wasn't it?
Very much so. And as you know, there's a great tradition in America of opposition to standing armies. Mm-hmm. And so for much of American history, there has never been a draft, and we've relied on the voluntary contributions of American citizens.
Well, in your book, you mentioned how long it took for these Revolutionary War veterans to get for lack of a better word, a pension. That it took quite a while, didn't it?
It did, and coming out of the Revolutionary War, it was unclear whether states should be responsible for rewarding soldiers. There was a weak national government originally. There were debates about who should do what and in what way. The economy was a little bit shaky, so indeed it did take some time.
And how did they fund this? Because you mentioned a lot of figures in the book. We're talking with Glenn Altschuler. The book is called The GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans. And we're trying to figure out how they were going to fund these benefits. And initially it was through tariffs, wasn't it?
Well, as you know, in early American history, there were no income taxes. There were no sales taxes. And tariffs were really the principal mechanism in which revenues came into government.
And so how much did these veterans receive once they started receiving some funds?
Well, it really varied quite considerably, and as I said, the principal mechanism involved grants of land. So we can't really put a dollar figure on it.
Okay. I also noticed again that you mentioned in your text that they were talking about the grants of land that many of the veterans would prefer cash, so they sold them off.
That's right. That there was a fair amount of land speculation, and as you know, I live in Ithaca, New York, and upstate New York was to no small degree settled by Revolutionary War soldiers through some of those land grants, and that's one of many areas that saw a transformation in the post-Revolutionary War years.
Right, and for those of us out here in the Midwest, we know that many of them came out here and also into Ohio and that area.
That's right.
And it's pretty interesting. So let's move forward, and we've got the War of 1812, we get into the Mexican War. Were they able to provide benefits for those veterans?
No real significant benefits coming out of those wars. It's really the Civil War that is the significant change, and there, of course, that's a war of North against South. So the benefits, so to speak, were obviously only for Union soldiers, and they came in the form of pensions, initially to pensions to people who had suffered some injury or wound, but then that was defined so broadly that many Civil War veterans got pensions, and ultimately their families became beneficiaries of some of those pensions as well. In the post-Civil War period, the pensions to Civil War veterans were the biggest expenditure by the federal government.
Yeah, I was, again, reading in there, you were talking about a percentage that the government was paying out in these benefits to not only the veterans but to their families, their widows, and their children.
That's right.
It was a large percentage of the federal budget.
Yeah, and remember, it's hard for us to remember now. In those days, the federal government's functions were pretty small. So, post office, armed forces, not much more than that. So when you have a pension plan, in that context, it becomes a significant proportion of the federal budget. And it was through the rest of the 19th century when Civil War veterans and their families began to die out a bit.
It just seems like it was an awful lot of money. We're talking with Glenn Altschuler, the author of the GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans, and we encourage you to give us a call here at Veterans Radio at 877-573-7825. The Grand Army of the Republic seemed to be the political force behind those pension plans, wasn't it?
Yes, as you know, Dale, and of course this is true today with a number of veterans organizations, the formation of veterans organizations to assist veterans is a tradition in American history, and the Grand Army of the Republic was a large and powerful organization that lobbied the federal government for the kinds of assistance that ultimately these veterans got.
I was thinking as we were talking about these retirement plans and pensions that came up there, many civilians were not necessarily in support of providing pensions to veterans because they felt that the veterans should have just, they go off and they fight, but then they go back to civilian life and, just go on with their lives.
Yes, and some others, Dale, saw that there was some corruption in the system, that people were getting grants of money that who perhaps didn't deserve it. And this was particularly true when the grants were tied to injuries or wounds, and there was a thought that people were essentially faking the evidence of those wounds.
Well, I can only imagine the politics of it, because we're coming up to World War I, and this is where things really started to get interesting. Because after World War I, they still did not. They just gave them a mustering out check, didn't they, initially?
A mustering out check initially, and then a promise of a bonus, but because the American economy was soft immediately after the end of World War I, that bonus would not be paid until 1940. And so when the Depression hit, many veterans said, and you can certainly understand it, look, I can't wait till 1940 for this bonus. I need this money now. And that is the impetus for the famous bonus army that marched to Washington, D.C. in 1932 to try to pressure President Hoover to grant those bonuses immediately. President Hoover refused to meet with them. He sent a young general by the name of Douglas MacArthur to clear them out of their tents in Anacostia Flats, right outside of Washington. And that certainly did not endear Herbert Hoover to members of the armed forces.
No, and it's always interesting when you find these names in history of MacArthur, and I think MacArthur's assistant, was Eisenhower.
That's right.
And that they actually pushing these veterans out of there, and there was some violence. It wasn't the Army didn't get involved in this. Evidently, it was the Washington D.C. police that got involved in that. And it's a really interesting story, though, as to how the political trail that came out of World War I, because there were so many veterans that came back, and I can't remember the exact number. I don't have it in front of me, but to an economy that again, you go from fighting to civilian life overnight, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to fit back into society from the veteran standpoint. And of course, most civilians don't have a clue as to what you've gone through, and they just think, well, just come back and go back to work.
Oh, no, you're so right, Dale. And it's very important to say that the failure to address the reintegration of veterans of World War I provides the pressure to do a much better job for veterans of World War II. We all know that expression, fighting the last war. Mm-hmm. Well, the GI Bill of 1944 not only fights the last war, World War I, but fights the current war, World War II, with probably the most important piece of legislation of the 20th century.
Well, we're going to get right into that right now. We got about 5 minutes to go before we get to the bottom of the hour. We're talking with Glenn Altschuler, who is one of the authors of the GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans. If you've got a question or a comment, give us a call here locally at Veterans Radio at 877-573-7825. All right, we've got World War I is behind us. We've got Roosevelt is now in the White House, and he is doing all sorts of things with his new deals. And what happens? How does this GI Bill get going?
He was interested as early, really, as 1942, 1943, to make sure that veterans had a smooth transition to a peacetime economy. And he was motivated by several reasons. One is there was a tremendous fear that if you don't do something to assist World War II veterans, you're going to have 16 million men and women plopped down on the economy looking for jobs without adequate resources. That might plunge the United States back into a depression. So there was an economic impetus for helping GIs. And, of course, there was a moral impetus that many of these guys and women had interrupted their lives, had sacrificed for the country, and at the very least, they should be provided the opportunity that was available to those who didn't go and serve in the armed forces. those two reasons converged, and President Roosevelt, Democrats, and Republicans came together. This is a wonderful moment, Dale, of bipartisanship. We don't hear a lot about bipartisanship in 2009, but bipartisanship is certainly in evidence in the GI Bill of 1944, which passes unanimously and whose provisions are extraordinarily generous, the most generous provisions for veterans in the history of the United States.
I think it's amazing that Roosevelt was able to maneuver this bill through the various factions that were out there. And I know that the American Legion was very instrumental in getting the GI Bill program approved. Can you talk about a little bit of their influence?
The American Legion is responsible for the shape of the bill, and the really brilliant idea of the American Legion was to put all of the provisions that were being talked about together in one piece of legislation. So this piece of legislation not only has a provision for GIs to go to college, sub-college training, unemployment, housing, the possibility of purchasing a business or farm. That's an extraordinary array of benefits. The American Legion is also responsible for calling the bill the GI. The bill originally it was called for GI Joe and GI Jane, and for mobilizing support for that legislation. So the role of the American Legion is critical in the passage of the bill. There's no question about that.
And I'm sure that the other veteran service organizations of the time got involved with that. And I think it's just very interesting to think about. Again, I'm so amazed how he got this through with the different factions that were out there, from conservatives to liberals, and there was some restraint that they didn't want to provide a bill for a specific group of people, because they'd already had, they finally got Social Security passed in 1935, I think.
35, yeah. But Dale, one of the ironies, I think, for the GI Bill is that the people who passed the bill and the American Legion really didn't think that the most important or most costly provision in the bill would be the higher education provision. And so since they thought that maybe not all that many GIs would go to college or university, they made the provisions a little bit more generous because they didn't think they would be budget busters. I
think this is a good place to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about the amazing effect that the GI Bill had on our father's generation when they came home from World War II. We're talking with Glenn Altschuler, one of the authors of the GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans, and we're going to be talking about that when we come back. Give us a call, 877-573-7825. Tell us how you used your GI Bill. We'll be right back. You're listening to Veterans Radio.
For 3,400 recipients of the nation's highest award, this is one of them. Staff Sergeant Webster Anderson, although wounded by 3 hand grenades, refused medical treatment and continued to lead his men. Details after this. During the early morning hours, Battery A's defensive position was attacked by a determined North Vietnamese Army infantry unit. The initial enemy onslaught breached the battery defensive perimeter. Anderson mounted the exposed parapet of his howitzer position and became the mainstay of the defense of the battery position. Anderson directed devastating direct howitzer fire on the assaulting enemy while providing rifle and grenade defensive fire against enemy soldiers attempting to overrun his gun section position. While protecting his crew and directing their fire against the enemy from his exposed position, 2 enemy grenades exploded at his feet, knocking him down and severely wounding him in the legs. Despite the excruciating pain, and though not able to stand, Anderson propped himself on the parapet and continued to direct howitzer fire upon the closing enemy and to encourage his men to fight on. Seeing an enemy grenade land within the gun pit near a wounded member of his gun crew, Anderson, heedless of his own safety, seized the grenade and attempted to throw it over the parapet to save his men. As the grenade was thrown from the position, it exploded, and Anderson was again grievously wounded. Although only partially conscious and severely wounded, Anderson refused medical evacuation and continued to encourage his men in the defense of the position. Anderson, by his inspirational leadership, was able to maintain the defense of his section position and to defeat a determined attack.
The Medal of Honor series is a production of Veterans Radio.
We're back on Veterans Radio, and as the music leads us right into our discussion of the GI Bill, a New Deal for Veterans, we're talking with author Glenn Altschuler, who is a professor at Cornell University, and also looks like you did a really great book on rock and roll. I have to check that one out, too. I want to give you, all of our listeners out there, an opportunity to give us a call at 877-573-7825. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, better known as the GI Bill, was signed by President Roosevelt on June 22nd, 1944. Tell us what happened as a result of that, Glenn.
Well, there were 16 million veterans of World War II, and that's an astonishing number of men and women.
Right.
More than half of them used one or more provisions of the GI Bill. And I don't think there's any doubt that this legislation played a significant role in the extraordinary prosperity of the United States in the period of the late 1940s and through the 1950s. Probably most importantly, more than 2 million veterans went to school on the GI Bill. And what I want to emphasize, Dale, is that this bill paid tuition up to $500 plus living expenses for a veteran. And at that time, the tuition at Harvard was $500.
Oh.
So there was no college or university in America where the GI Bill would not pay full tuition. That's extraordinary.
That is extraordinary, and it's not only the colleges, and we know about in our area here. We're around University of Michigan, Eastern Michigan University, and that the construction boom that went along with this GI Bill to house these students.
There were many temporary quarters. Here at Cornell, we talk about this in the book. A lot of veterans were put up in Quonset huts, in temporary barracks, in reconverted hotels, but also, of course, universities had to accommodate these GIs with lab spaces, with classrooms, with more instructors. And this bill not only served these GIs, but it did something else that's vital. It demonstrated to Americans that an ordinary guy or gal could make it through college because the GIs did extraordinarily well, and it demonstrated at just the right time the visibility of higher education and the importance of higher education to make your way in American society. So the ripple effect of the GI Bill was felt for years and decades to come, not only on the individual lives of these GIs, but on people who are not GIs and on American society in general. It's an extraordinary story.
It truly is, and you were talking about, you teach at Cornell. In fact, right after the passage of the GI Bill, I think it was Governor Dewey didn't think that New York had enough colleges and universities to provide room for their veterans because they had such a large population of veterans at the time that it kind of was the inspiration for the New York public university system, wasn't it?
He initially pressed for some new colleges to be found just to accommodate all the GIs who wanted to come, and that initiative is the origin of the public university system that followed. So again, the expansion in higher education is related in some significant ways to the GI Bill itself. By the way, Dale, there was a period in the late 1940s where just about 50% of all of the students in institutions of American higher education were GIs. That's pretty amazing.
That's fantastic. I mean, just the opportunity to go to school, I think for a lot of these men and women was something that they never dreamed of.
That's right, and a lot of people said, well, they're not going to do very well. They're going to need special assistance. Quite the contrary. These GIs were very serious students. They were very successful students, and ultimately they were among hundreds of thousands of Americans who became teachers and engineers and doctors. And so as America moved from an industrial society to a post-industrial society, these GIs provided the human capital for that transition.
Right, and I'm trying to find a quote, and I can't find it in here right off the top of my head. I forget who it was. It said that it not intellectualized, but it made us become so much more aware of how much more knowledge is out there. And
that's right. And I think you're referring to Peter Drucker, the famous management guru. And Peter Drucker asserted that the GI Bill, because it provided the human capital for a knowledge society, was the most important piece of legislation in American history. Hard to argue with it.
No, I want to just look at some of the numbers here that we got in one of your press releases, and it talks as a result of the GI Bill, the number of professionals in the U.S. skyrocketed. 450,000 new engineers, 180,000 new doctors, dentists, and nurses, 360,000 teachers, 150,000 scientists, 243,000 astronauts, 107,000 lawyers, 36,000 clergymen who were able to join the workforce because of the GI Bill. Some of the people that have benefited, names that our audience might recognize, Harry Belafonte, Charles Bronson, Johnny Cash, Bill Cosby, Senator Dole, Senator Graham, Gene Hackman, Joseph Heller, and the list just goes on and on and on, including Chief Supreme Court Justice William Rehnquist. All of these people benefited from the GI Bill. And it's not just the college part of the GI Bill that people benefited from. I wanted you to go into the non-traditional, I guess you could say, trade type of schools that they were able to go to also.
Yeah, it was called sub-college training.
Right.
And there were millions of people who used sub-college training. And, some of it obviously was a little bit frivolous. You could go to bartending school. But for many people, having the opportunity to get some training to be a hairdresser, to get some training to be, remember the days when there was such a thing as a television repairman?
Oh, yeah, the guy with the tube box.
That's right. Those kinds of professions. People wanted to become airline pilots and did some training for that. Some of it was just enrichment of their lives. So the sub-college training, too, provided an opportunity for vocational and avocational training. And many GIs found that extraordinarily important. Remember, at this time, you had many GIs who were not high school graduates. And so having the opportunity to do sub-college training was very important to them.
I was talking to a friend of mine. I teach part-time at a local community college, and she was talking about the GED program that was started up during World War II also.
Yes, and again, as you know, opportunities for people in non-traditional ways to be able to graduate from high school are another significant part of our educational system now.
Again, it's just fascinating, and then I'm looking through the pictures inside of this book, and I'm encouraging people out there. The book is entitled "The GI Bill: A New Deal for Veterans," and I'm talking with one of the authors, Glenn Altschuler. And give us a call. Tell us what you did with your GI Bill at 877-573-7825. We talked about the educational benefits of the GI Bill. What about the housing benefits?
The housing benefit was also very important because there was a government guarantee of loans to purchase housing at a low interest rate.
I think it's at 4%.
4%. Many GIs, Dale, were first-time home buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Young men, some instances young women, about 2% of the armed forces at that time were women, starting a family. And as many of your listeners will remember, this is a period of suburbanization. This is a period where people are buying their first homes. And I've talked to many, many GIs who said, that's how I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing about and knowing that this government guarantee would be available allowed me to do it. Made it possible for me to do it.
Right. We're going to continue talking with Glenn about the GI Bill, not only the one from World War II, but the most recent post 9/11 GI Bill. When we come back after this next break, we're talking about the GI Bill, education, home ownership, lots of things. Give us a call. You're listening to Veterans Radio. We'll be right back after these short messages. We're back on Veterans Radio, and we're talking about the GI Bill that was passed in 1944. And when Johnny came marching home, not only could he go to college, he could go to a trade school, and he could also buy homes. And we're talking with the author of the GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans, Glenn Altschuler. And I want you to give us a call at 877-573-7825. And Glenn, we want to hold on for a second. We do have a call on the line. I've got Bob from Westland. Bob, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Hi, Bob.
Hi. How you doing?
Good.
Yes, I used the GI Bill, went to Henry Ford Community College for 7.5 years for an associate's degree in heating and cooling before the government actually told me I had to leave. And then I turned around and used the GI Bill to buy my first house. And by doing this, I got laid off about 6 years ago and used my heating and cooling stuff to get my new job.
What war did you serve in?
I was U.S. Navy. I'm retired after 21 years.
Uh-huh.
I was active duty in reserves.
That's great.
Well, you see, it works, folks. It works. I went to school on the GI Bill. I bought my first home on the GI Bill. Bob also bought his first home on a GI Bill. We all utilized the benefits. It was such a great way for us to get our lives back after serving however long we were in the service. It's a great program.
And I might say here, Dale, to you and to Bob as well, that the provisions changed with each war, with the Korean War, Vietnam War, and then in 1985 with the Montgomery Bill. Full tuition wasn't covered by those pieces of legislation. They were less generous than the GI Bill of 1944, but as both of you can testify, they were nonetheless meaningful to many veterans.
It was a great opportunity. I mean, I was able to go to, sounds like Bob, I went to a community college for a year and then transferred to the University of Michigan, and my allowance was enough for me to pay all my tuition. Had to dip into savings for books and things, but I was able to pay the tuition.
Yeah.
And
mine paid for everything when I went there for 7.5 years.
That's great, Bob.
That's a true thing. Thank you very much, Bob, for calling. It was great talking to you, and thanks for listening to Veterans Radio.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. You mentioned, I was looking through your book, Glenn, here, and I was looking at the pictures, and not only was it the educational system, but it brought up new economies. I'm looking at your Vetsville or Vetsburg that was built up around Cornell, but also Levittown. For the people on the East Coast.
Yeah, Levittown is, again, part of this phenomenon of suburbanization. Inexpensive houses in the suburbs. Many of the people who bought their first homes in Levittown did it on VA mortgages, no doubt about it.
I just think it is amazing. Let's kind of move forward. We had were there any other things about the GI Bill that we should know about? Oh, the unemployment. The
unemployment was very important. Originally, I think the framers of the GI Bill thought it would be the most important provision, and indeed, several million GIs used it for one period of time, it was up to 52 weeks of unemployment benefits at $20 a week. And for many GIs, it was the transition from a demobilization to getting that first job. Mm-hmm. It turned out happily that we didn't go into a recession after World War II, and jobs were plentiful, and so it was used perhaps less than people feared. But for GIs, it meant a cushion, what we now call a safety net.
Right.
So that while they were looking for those jobs, they were able to pay the bills. And I might say here, Dale, as well, that that these veterans have paid back in increased taxes many, many times over the amount of money that they got from Uncle Sam, whether they were using their higher education benefit or 5220 or any of these other benefits. This is an example of a government program that is not only the gift that keeps on giving, but one in which the government gets back. That's a pretty extraordinary piece of legislation.
That certainly is. And we were talking earlier about how the GI Bill has evolved over time. And, each conflict had its own version or change to it. As you mentioned, some of the benefits were a little bit lower. I've got a call for you again. I've got a call here. I got John from Bay City. Thanks for calling Veterans Radio. You have a comment?
Hi, John.
Good morning. Good morning, brothers. I served in from 1966 to 1970. I was a member of the 14th Armored Cavalry, and our mission was to patrol the East German border at the Fulda Gap. And I must say, men, that the benefits brought forth to those that have served, the impact that it had on my life was awesome. I went to college, night school, business school. Then I went to Wilmington College. So it afforded me my advertising career in a newspaper, and we could never do too much for the men and women that serve this great country. And so I appreciate the efforts of this station, because when we came home, regardless of what part of the world we were in, the reception we got was not the reception we deserved. But we don't live in that past. We thank God for this country and the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. That's very much. Thank you, John. Yes, we all do keep moving forward, and we always make sure that we protect each other's back. Thanks, John, for calling. We'll be talking again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's talk a little bit about the, as we move forward, as I said, about the different benefits out there. I want to talk right now about the newest GI Bill, the post-9/11 bill. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, this was passed in 2008. It tends to be associated with the name of Senator James Webb from Virginia, but it too had bipartisan support. It's more generous in its provisions than were the bills for the Korean War veterans and Vietnam War veterans. Not quite as generous as the World War II, the iconic World War II bill, but it provides a tuition up to the most expensive public university in the state of a veteran, or if that veteran wants to go to a private institution, he or she can apply that amount of money allocated to the public institution to the private institution and make up the difference. There is also a housing stipend. There's a stipend for books, and there's a stipend for tutors.
Wow.
And there is, Dale, a new and very imaginative provision for those service personnel who've served for 6 years and who re-up for another 4 years. The benefit, the higher education benefit, can be transferred to a spouse or children. That's the first time in American history that's happened. Even in World War II, where the provisions were so generous, war widows came to Congress and said, look, our husbands died. How about transferring the higher education provision to us? And Congress said no. Mm-hmm. In 2008, Congress had said yes to those who serve 6 years and sign up for another 4.
Well, I also know that, and I'm encouraging everybody out there that's interested in this, you can go to the VA website, va.gov, and you can look under the new GI Bill, and there's a program in there that's, and I wrote it down here, some of the Yellow Ribbon Program. And there are many schools across the country that will make up the difference.
Yes.
Between what you are allocated for the highest public university in your state. If you go to a private school, many of them will make up the difference, and there's a whole list of schools in there for you.
That is indeed the case, and other institutions will work with veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's worth your while to contact an institution. If you're able to be admitted to that institution, there's at least a reasonable chance that they're going to work with you to make sure that money is not the barrier.
Boy, I just think it's great. I've had the privilege of having many Iraq and Afghanistan veterans in my classes, and I know it's even going to grow bigger. Glenn, we're running up to the end of the hour, and it's been a great conversation. I want to thank you so very much for being on Veterans Radio. This is Glenn Altschuler, who was one of the authors of the GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans. And where can they get their book?
You can get it on Amazon. It's the GI Bill, A New Deal for Veterans. You can get it from Oxford University Press. You can get it from your local bookstore. This was a great honor as well as a joy to write this book, and I think veterans will really enjoy it.
I think they will too. And Glenn, thank you so very much for doing that and for being on Veterans Radio. And I got to get you back on the program to talk about rock and roll.
I'd be delighted to do it, Dale.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you
now.
again. All right, another show. We're almost out of time. Make sure that you tune in next week. We're going to be talking with some people from the Military Writers Society of America and a great story of a World War II veteran. Until then, you are dismissed.
The opinions or views expressed on this program are not necessarily of Veterans Radio or the station. Veterans Radio is a production of Veterans Radio, LLC.